the world of spirits, the graveyard witch, and her deadly love. Margaret had always feared the old graveyard near their home, but the fear had become real. Dark clouds hung low, the wind whistled eerily through broken tombstones, and an unnatural chill crawled across her skin. Susan, her daughter, was frantic. She knew she had to protect her younger sister, Lily, from something unspeakable lurking in the shadows. Susan led Lily through a smaller graveyard on the outskirts of the village, a place where villagers occasionally passed, hoping some light of safety remained. But the moment they entered, the air grew thick and suffocating, the ground trembling as if warning them to leave. Margaret, heart pounding, ran after them. She could barely see through the dense mist when she caught sight of Susan at the old tree in the center of the graveyard. Lily was tired, struggling, her eyes wide with terror. Suddenly, the graves trembled. Cracks appeared along the earth, and from the depths, the dead began to rise. Skeletons and corpses emerged, their hollow eyes fixed on the living. Susan's face was pale, her eyes glowing unnaturally. A dark, otherworldly power had taken hold of her. "Let me go, Susan! Please!" Lily screamed, but Susan's humanity had vanished. The witch inside her, Selina, had merged with her soul. From every tomb, the dead rose and formed a ring around Susan, awaiting her command. She whispered to them with a horrifying sweetness. "Rise, my children of the grave. Bring me all who walk among the living." The dead shambled toward Lily, their groans chilling the night air. Margaret ran back home in despair. Andrew, her husband, woke to her frantic cries. "Andrew, you must come. The witch, she has Lily. She's turning the living into the dead." Andrew's voice shook. I cannot go. If that witch kills me, I don't want to die." "Margaret, if Lily is to survive, you'll have to save her yourself." But Margaret did not hesitate. She returned to the graveyard, her heart full of courage, even as the cold wind and eerie moans threatened to paralyze her. There, Selina, now fully awakened, cut Lily's throat. The girl's body went limp, her eyes staring blankly. Margaret screamed, but the dead had already surrounded her. Hovering above, Selina hissed, "Your life ends here. You will join them." The dead. Margaret's heart shattered as she realized the horrifying truth. Selina had already killed her husband, Alfred. His body, lifeless and twisted, emerged from a nearby grave. Margaret screamed, reaching for him. "Why aren't you speaking?" she cried. Selina laughed coldly. "When I killed your husband, you watched helplessly. He is mine, as are they all now. Today, there is no one to save you." Margaret begged for Susan's life. Selina's eyes glimmered with cruel amusement. "You care for your daughter? Very well. For now, she will live." Then, in an instant of merciless cruelty, Selina ended Susan's life as well. Margaret herself was slashed across the throat, blood pouring down her dress. She fell, lifeless, joining the ranks of the dead. Outside, Andrew tried to flee with his children. But from the graveyard, a legion of dead advanced, their eyes hollow and unyielding. Panicked, Andrew left his children in the car and ran, only to be stopped by Selina herself. "You cannot escape," she hissed. "All of you will join me." The children cried out, "Don't hurt our father." But Selina ignored their pleas, turning them into corpses as well. From that night onward, anyone who approached the graveyard faced the same fate. Selina hated humans. She loved only the dead. Slowly, the village became known as Spirit Village. Years passed. Ethan, the surviving son of Margaret and Andrew, had grown into a clever and brave young man. He had escaped the massacre, living in the city, but the memories of his lost family haunted him. Determined to reclaim a sense of closure, he decided to return to his village, now a ghost town. His teacher warned him, "Do not go there, Ethan. Spirits dwell in that village. You cannot survive." But Ethan was resolute. Before leaving, he visited a local priest, explaining the horrors he would face. The priest gave him a golden locket inscribed with the word God and a mystical fireball, instructing him, "When you face her, Ethan, this will protect you. Only courage and faith can keep you alive." When Ethan reached the village, the ruins of his home greeted him. The house was covered in dust, bones scattered around, and the stench of death lingering. From the shadows, Selina appeared, now disguised as a beautiful young woman. "My name is Selina," she said, her voice silky. "I'm new here. Who are you, and why have you come?" Ethan sensed the danger immediately. He revealed his identity and the story of his family. Selina smiled faintly, leading him toward the graveyard under the pretense of conversation. "I wish to marry you," she whispered, her eyes glinting. "Tonight, we will be together forever." Ethan hesitated. Something about her beauty felt unnatural. Then realization struck. Selina was no human. The witch intended to drain his youth to regain her powers. Ethan confronted her, using the priest's fireball and the protective locket. Selina screeched in terror, forced back into her grave. One by one, the dead returned to their tombs. Ethan placed the locket on her grave, sealing her powers. For now, the village remained cursed, forever known as Spirit Village. Ethan and other survivors never returned, choosing life and safety over the haunted land of the dead. The graveyard a night David and Michael will never forget. David and Michael had been best friends since childhood. They weren't the kind of guys who liked staying at home on weekends. They always wanted to push each other into doing something bold, something exciting, something that proved they weren't afraid of anything. One cool autumn evening, as they sat drinking tea by the roadside cafe, David leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "Let's do something different tonight. Something real." Michael narrowed his eyes. "Like what?" "We already went on that midnight drive last week. What else is left?" David's voice lowered to a whisper. "The graveyard. The old one, by the abandoned railway line." Michael's heart skipped. Everybody in town knew about that graveyard. It wasn't just old. It was forgotten. The iron gates were falling apart. The tombstones were cracked, and weeds grew so thick they looked like they were choking the graves. People told stories about it. Strange lights at night, shadows moving without a source, whispers that carried on the wind when no one was around. Some even claimed they had seen a woman in white wandering among the graves. Michael forced a laugh. "You're joking. That place isn't safe. No one even buries people there anymore." "Exactly," David replied, his eyes glinting. "That's why it's perfect. We'll go inside, sit there for half an hour, and come back." Simple Michael hesitated, but he didn't want to look like a coward. He sighed. "Fine. But if we get caught by police, it's on you." At around 11:30 that night, they left on David's motorcycle. The roads were almost empty, street lights flickering every few seconds. As they rode further out, the familiar noises of the city faded. The crickets grew louder. Dogs barked in the distance. The night air was colder than usual, and Michael felt a strange heaviness in his chest. When they reached the graveyard, the gate creaked open with the slightest push. Rust fell like powder from the iron. They parked outside, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped in. The moment they entered, Michael felt the air change. It was damp, colder, and carried a faint smell of earth and rotting wood. Their footsteps crunched against gravel and dry leaves, the sound far too loud in the silence that surrounded them. "See? Nothing here," David said, trying to sound brave, but his voice was quieter than usual. They walked deeper, passing leaning gravestones. Many were so old, the names had faded completely. A few were broken, lying flat on the ground, half buried under weeds. Michael pointed to a large tree in the far corner. "Let's sit there, safer near the wall." They sat with their backs against the rough bark, pretending to relax. They joked, swapped ghost stories, even laughed a little. For a while, it almost felt silly, until Michael froze. He had heard something. At first, it was faint, like the wind whistling. But then he realized it wasn't the wind. It was crying, soft, broken sobs, carried from somewhere within the graveyard. "David," he whispered, nudging his friend. "Do you hear that?" David tilted his head, frowning. And then he heard it too, the soft, muffled crying of a woman. "It's probably a cat," David muttered, though his voice betrayed doubt. Michael stood and lifted the flashlight. He aimed it between two gravestones and froze. There was a figure, a woman, dressed in white, standing perfectly still, her back turned to them. Michael's throat tightened. "David," he whispered. David's face went pale. "Don't move," he muttered, but the figure slowly turned. Her face was gray, her eyes sunken hollows, her mouth slightly open, as if she was still sobbing. Michael's flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died. Darkness swallowed them. The crying rose into a shrill, piercing scream that filled the graveyard, echoing so loudly, it felt like it came from every direction at once. Both boys bolted. Their feet stumbled over loose stones, weeds snagging at their legs, as if the ground itself wanted to hold them back. They didn't dare look behind. That scream followed them until they burst through the gate, out onto the road. They jumped on the motorcycle, hands shaking, hearts pounding so hard it hurt. David kicked the bike alive, and they sped down the road without a word. They didn't stop until they reached the bright, busy main street. The noise of cars and people was like a blessing. Only then did Michael whisper, "Tell me you saw her." David's hands were trembling on the handlebars. His voice was barely audible. "I saw her, and she was standing on my grandfather's grave." Michael blinked. He hadn't even known David's grandfather was buried there. David had never mentioned it. The next morning, David returned in daylight, his father beside him. They walked through the graveyard to the old tree. His grandfather's grave was there, just as he remembered, but the soil was fresh. The dirt looked as though it had been disturbed, dug up only the night before. From that day on, David never returned to the graveyard. But Michael swears that sometimes, when he wakes in the middle of the night, he hears soft crying outside his window. And when he gathers the courage to look, there's a shadow of a woman in white, standing at the edge of the street, watching.